super excited for our next guest. He stars in a new film called The Kill Team, which is out October 25th. It is tense, and he's sporting a rockin' mustache in it. Alexander Skarsgård's with us. What's going on, my man?
How are you?
Good to have you here. I got to say, when I first saw you in this film, The Kill Team, in the fatigues out in the desert, I was getting some Generation Kill flashbacks. I thought I was looking at the Iceman for a second there.
Yeah, I think visually quite similar in terms of the character. Sergeant Deeks and Sergeant Colbert,
a little different,
who I play in Generation Kill, are very different. And I would say that the moral compass of Deeks is 180 degrees different from Colbert's. It's quite different characters.
But he thinks his compass is right on the mark.
Oh,
Deeks,
yeah, no,
he's like, I am doing it.
Deeks believes in what he's doing. I think that's essential for playing the character. You obviously have to. In his eyes, he's not a villain. He's not doing anything wrong. He feels that the rules of engagement are. They don't really apply when you're out in the field, so you kind of have to massage them a bit. In his eyes, he's definitely a good guy.
Yeah, it's set in Afghanistan, and it's based on a true story, which I think is fascinating. And apparently there was a documentary, which I don't know if you had seen.
Same director, yeah.
I had not seen it, and it's about this Sergeant Deeks and this young soldier who goes over there, and just what killings are, quote unquote sanctioned, or how he encourages people to act with the Afghanis or with other people. And like Dalton said, it's about a moral compass, the moral compass of this one soldier played wonderfully by Nat Wolff, and about the moral compass of your character. Did you know the story? Had you seen the documentary?
I'd seen the documentary, and it's incredibly disturbing. But it's very well made and very interesting. So when Dan Krause, the filmmaker, reached out and wanted to sit down and talk to me, I was very excited to meet with him. And he's incredibly intelligent and knows these characters, has spent years on this subject matter, and had a very interesting take on a narrative version of it, and an opportunity to play. It's an incredibly dark character, but again, it's not an archetypical villain, which I thought was very refreshing. He really believes in what he's doing, and it's not through intimidation really that he gets the young soldiers to do what he wants. It's more, it's very seductive, and I found that really interesting, and so did Dan. And so early on in our first meeting, that was something we talked a lot about, how he manipulated these young soldiers into doing what he wanted them to do. And if someone wasn't quite responding, he would give someone else more attention. So it was almost like a love triangle where he would then, you kind of try to get them to become jealous, and they're all kind of desperately want his attention. The premise is these young soldiers, it's their first deployment, so they're very green. They've just lost their sergeant, and this new sergeant shows up, and that is Sergeant Deeks. He's got 3 deployments under his belt. He's very experienced. They admire him. It's basically like Superman shows up, and all these war stories and what he's done everything. He's seen everything. So you start out with in a position, obviously a position of authority, but it's something he can greatly use to his advantage, because there's something about the human psyche when you're dealing with someone, when you feel inferior and you're dealing with someone in a position of authority, people do have a tendency to forget their own morality when they're told to do something by someone in a position of authority. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to go up against someone in a position of authority. And Deeks obviously knows that and takes advantage of that. I didn't want it to be a story about a soldier struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder. It was just important to me, as much as I disagreed with what he did, to be able to motivate, when I was playing the character, to motivate it. For him, it's a difficult situation because you're not fighting men in uniforms. You're fighting insurgents, and a lot of his fellow soldiers were injured and killed by IEDs planted. And to work in that environment is obviously very, very stressful, when you know that every time you drive out from the base, you might get hit by an IED. But it's not traditional warfare in the sense of like, this is the enemy camp and we're going to go up against them, or it's and they're all in civilian clothing. That premise I can understand. I served in the military myself. I've never been to war. I have friends who have, and I do know how incredibly stressful it is to operate under those circumstances, and to try to remain sane when you're out there. And for Deeks, it was going from that understanding to taking it one step further, which is crossing a line, in my opinion, but not for Deeks, where he was like, well, they're all in on it. So, because every time we come out there and we try to find out where the IEDs are buried, no one knows, but they all know how to avoid them. But so how they clearly know where they're buried, and it's that, the frustration of that is what causes him to go like, well, then it's basically open season. We can shoot anyone because they're all in on it.
You're playing another scary dude coming up in The Stand, which you and I, we were just talking about off air a little bit. Playing Randall Flagg. I mean, one of the I just can't think of a more interesting or frightening character to get to play. What's it like? I know you're not going to tell us a whole lot, but what's it like just inhabiting that character, which means so much to so many readers?
It's extraordinarily thrilling and exciting. It's a fantastic opportunity. It's an iconic figure, and so far I've loved it. It's been Josh Boone as the showrunner, and he's been wonderful to collaborate with, and he's a real nerd. He's read all of Stephen King's novels, which is a great asset for myself, because Randall Flagg is not only in The Stand, but he appears in, I believe, 9 novels, and I've not read all of them, so it's been great working with Josh on. He'll give me like, oh, read this chapter from this book, or like this, they mention Randall Flagg or the Dark Man here, and it'll give you some insight to his background or who the character is. So that's been really great, and it's also fun working with someone like Josh, who is genuinely thrilled and excited to be doing this, and that's sadly not always the case on a set. You sometimes work with people who are fine with being there, but they're not like, he's like a little kid in a candy store. He's a super fan, and he is so excited about this opportunity, and I think that spreads to the crew and the cast when you have a leader who is so giddy about this opportunity.
It's funny because he's a seductive character too, and the guy who really seduces is this character of Lloyd, played by Nat Wolff, who you just seduced in The Kill Team.
Yeah.
So it's funny. It'll be another
round of seduction between myself and Nat Wolff. But the dynamic is slightly different here. So in The Kill Team, he resists me, but in The Stand, he's a
little more willing.
He's a good, well-behaved pet.
And then you have to play like the nicest person ever, because you've certainly going to have had your run of some scary
there's been
dudes.
A lot of darkness lately, but I've played some quite nice guys recently. I did a little something on Becoming a God in Central Florida.
The funniest scene I've ever seen all year is your quitting scene
Oh.
On becoming. I talked to Kirsten Dunst about it. I mean, I loved it. It was hilarious.
Oh,
You're in the
thank you.
tuxedo and
yeah.
going through the office. It was amazing.
It's quite a tragic character, but I loved him and had such a blast. And again, I think I needed some levity after a couple of these really dark characters, and it was fun. Kirsten Dunst and I played a married couple on Melancholia, a movie we did, Lars von Trier movie, almost many years ago.
Yeah.
And I loved working with her, and that was totally also quite a dark movie. It's about the end of the world.
But
But I was really excited when she called and asked if I wanted to come in and play her husband.
you're rocking some sweet hair in that film too. I mean, that TV show. Let me tell you, Alexander Skarsgård, always love having you come in. The Kill Team is really great, man. Thanks so much for coming in to talk about it. It's out October 25th, and we'll be back with more on EW Live. Thank you.